This is a bit of an introduction to a GIS task that I've put together to explore some of the factors that influence the size and the location and the nature of the liquefaction hazards that happened in Japan in 2011 following the Tohoku earthquake. So let's have a little bit of a look. First of all, we've got the tectonic setting here, and then we can zoom in a little bit closer and we begin to see some of the locations in the areas where we had the liquefaction hazard occurring. So I've got a topographical base set up here, a base map to allow us to see the topography a little bit better. And one of the things that we can very much quickly see is that the nature of the liquefaction hazard is not particularly related to distance from the epicenter. So what are the other factors at work? Well, we can do this just from the general overview, first of all, of these locations where you get liquefaction. You can see that they seem to have something in common in terms of their location. We can zoom in and take a look at one or two of them just by way of illustration. They tend to occur, surprise, surprise, along the river valleys where you have the sediment that has been deposited there, rather than on the mountainous areas that has rock with a very thin layer of sediment. So the thicker layers of sediment that tend to be lowland areas, the flatter areas that tend to be saturated, hey, surprise, surprise, you get liquefaction there. But they can absolutely see that pattern. But there's one thing that I've found that's very interesting to explore just a little bit further. So I'm just going to turn this off a little bit. We're going to have a bit of a history of the Tone River and the Kanto Plain near Tokyo. Well, this is the Tone River today, but if we were to travel back to the 16th century, this is where the Tone River would have been. Well, in actual fact, you can see there are three rivers here. This one here is the Tone River, and there are a couple of other rivers that are flowing into the sea here. Now, from what I've been reading on this, whenever Tokyo Bay started to develop as a port, they started to need to use these rivers for navigation, and the rivers here were not particularly suited to navigation, and they were dredged and straightened. In fact, they were completely relocated in the case of the Tone River, and this is the location it now experiences. What that allows us to do then is to examine the impact of channelization and river management processes on the manifestation of the liquefaction hazard. So I'll just turn this back off again, and here's the river, and we're going to go and explore some particular locations. Now, I should absolutely take this opportunity to pay tribute to Joe Wortman, who was one of the authors of this report, or this article that I came across online, or at least I came across some of the images you'll see here. The actual journal article was behind a paywall, but Joe very kindly agreed to share this with me. Just a slight side note, I have absolutely found the vast majority of academics, when you reach out to them to ask them for something that's behind a paywall, are very happy to share it. I guess somebody that shows interest in their work is something that they're going to want to respond to. So a lot of what I've got from here, in fact, all of what I've got from here is courtesy of Joe and his colleagues who were doing this work. So based on some of the information that he did and found, let's go and have a wee look at some of these locations. Now, I am not even going to try to butcher the pronunciation of that area, but what this is showing is one of the places and the locations where you would have previously had a meander, and the river, as you can see, has been very much straightened and channelized here. But the some of the resources from Joe's article, his journal article, were very, very useful in this. And you can see here in this image that has been taken from Google Earth, you can see the sand boils that are produced by the liquefaction from the Tohoku quake. And you can see that they absolutely sit within this area of where the previous meander was. Now, how do we know that's a previous meander? Because if you go and compare this to a map from the 1880s, you can see that location there is where that meander was, the river pre-channelization, and you can see where those have manifested themselves within that, this poorly consolidated soil, this infill from the previous meander. So you can see that there. The next location that we'll go to, we'll pop further down the river a little bit to Sawara. I think I'd probably have a go at that. And let's have a wee look and see at what Joe has pointed out here. This is an area that was formerly marshland. Let just this develop up here. Yes, here we go. There's the area of marshland, and you can see he's annotated on here showing the locations of where these places are that are now part of this settlement of Sawara. But this was all very much marshland in those days, and you can see now here's the marshland area, the hospital and other places that have been developed. I also popped in here some of these photographs. This is showing where you got the sand boils. And this is an area that's been affected by or a building that's been affected by it as well. So what we can do is go back in here and explore this particular area. There's the place where you've got the sand boils. You can click on that. And there's the place where the building was damaged. If we go back in here and have a little bit of a look at that, you can see post-liquefaction settlement of about 45 centimeters here. This building's actually looks either like the building has raised up or the pavement has gone down. I'm not entirely sure which one it is, but you can absolutely see the impact that liquefaction has had there on that. And finally, let's go to Fusa, which is down near the mouth of the river. We're not too far away from where it comes into the sea at this point. So at Fusa here, what we've got is a former canal area here, which has now been completely infilled, but again, it's not particularly well filled, it's not particularly well consolidated. And if we have a look here, we can see that the area here has been the area that has been completely affected by liquefaction. Joe's article says that this is pretty much where you had the liquefaction manifesting itself almost exclusively there in that area. And again, here is one of the old maps showing the filled canal or pond that existed there. And it's showing here a post-liquefaction settlement of 90 centimeters. It looks like this building has sunk 90 centimeters into the ground as a result of that. And there is that building. Well, that's where it was. You can see there's not even here anymore. It's been removed because a building, I suppose, that's damaged to that degree cannot be deemed to be safe. So what this is allowing us to do then is to really do what GIS does so well, to start with, that big overview of where all the liquefaction hazards were manifesting themselves, relating that to your topographical base, but then to really drill into some of those fine-grained details and seeing some of the particular manifestations. And I think this is a useful one for us to do with our students, just simply because the exam questions very often will take particular examples, and the students need to be able to go from the general theory to the particular example, and they need to be able to respond to the particular convergence of circumstances that occur in any of these locations. And I think being able to use the GIS map helps you to do that, but it's another example, and I've just found so many of these during my recent revamp of a lot of my tectonics and seismic hazards material, of the academics that are actually doing this or working out here in the real world. If we just reach out to them as geography teachers, it's amazing how many of these really interesting and cool little spatially contextualized examples we get from people that are not only have first-hand experience, but first-hand academic experience. So this is my next map that I'm going to be using with my sixth form students, and I very much look forward to using it to explore liquefaction with them.